this episode of Frank Perspectives. In the previous episodes, we have talked about COVID impact on lending, on liabilities, on bankers, on global markets, on collections. But the most important aspect of the impact will be felt by the people who run all these businesses, the human resources. So to discuss this in depth today, I have with me two industry veterans, Chandru Pingali, a veteran banker and consultant with more than 3 decades of experience. He's the founder of Icube, a boutique firm focused on bringing human capital solutions to enhance productivity and business performance for many organizations. In his previous avatar as a banker, he was a managing director and global head of HR, corporate and institutional banking and group strategy at Standard Chartered Bank for a long period of time. He's a TISS graduate and now lives in Singapore. So very warm welcome to Chandru, and thank you for taking the time out and joining us today.
Thank you.
I also have with me Pallab Mukherji, a HR veteran with more than 25 years of banking and consulting experience. He's a chief people's officer at Equitas Small Finance Bank and has worked in senior positions with IIFL and a long stint with HDFC Banking. He's an XLRI graduate, an engineer who chose human engineering over machines. So very warm welcome to you, Pallab. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Amit. Thanks for the invite.
So these are very, very interesting time. And from an HR perspective, I'm sure both of you would be seeing the organizations, deliberating on what should be the approach forward. There has to be some kind of a recalibration that has to happen in the way workplaces are being run. So my first question is around these changes that are going to happen in the workplace on the infra side and also on the cultural side. Primarily coming in on account of the increased requirement and increased fear of safety and sanitation. Of course, changing the way we interact within teams and the way we interact with the customers. So Chandru, I start with you. What's your thought in terms of these changes which are going to happen in the workplace?
I guess we will have to take ourselves back to having workplaces to work from all along in our lives. Now, I guess where we are heading is because of this remote working, institutionalization of telecommuting way of working is going to be the new normal. And therefore, we can see nuggets of announcements across the world about how big organizations are beginning to institutionalize the aspect of remote working. Google announced that, Twitter announced more permanently that they could have employees working from home or any other place. TCS says 70% of its workforce technically could work from home, and likewise all other technologies and other companies. And therefore, what would then happen is that the demand for the workplace or demand for real estate of the workplace will dramatically reduce at one level. What is the impact on culture? So when you start having 1/3 of the workforce working from office, 1/3 of the workforce from home, and 1/3 of the workforce in a BCP contingency site because you don't want these two sites as well corrupted, you will have virtual workforces working in rotation. If that is the case, then the challenge for business leaders will be what kind of virtual engagement process that you need to create to manage these workforces efficiently and effectively. That's number one. Number two, how do we enhance productivity or even maintain the same productivity for these workforces is the second challenge that they need to. Third one is about what kind of people policies and processes that we need to put in place and ensure that those are working effectively. And the fourth is about the metrics and measures of performance associated with collaborative, secure, digital workplaces that generate over the period of time. So I think those are the 4 points that cover the aspects of culture that need to be addressed.
So Pallab, in your view, of course, infrastructure and cultural changes are bound to happen. But one point where I specifically want your input on is team management. With all these things happening, and Chandru pointed out with examples in terms of work from home and remote working becoming a norm. How does team management happen in such times?
Virtual teams, as Chandru correctly pointed out, is going to be an absolute reality. And if I may add to it, product, process, and people, all the items are going to change from where they are today. At Equitas also, we are saying that at least 50% of the non-field staff probably are going to be working from home over a period of time. Probably in a year's time, we'll reach that status. I'm leading a project on that as we speak, so we'll reach there. In terms of team management, it is going to be a balance. At some stage we will probably put in some kind of measure, measure that's related to how you measure screen time, how you measure productivity, etc. At the same time, there needs to be an element of trust, because if the employee feels completely caged, then I do not believe that he or she can give optimum productivity. We need to be flexible with probably timings that he or she operates in. I know that banking is regulated, so therefore certain timelines are sacrosanct. But other than that, yes, flexibility in timings, how it kind of operates, and the balance between productivity and flexibility will take prevalence.
So, do you think banks are now waking up to this that rigid framework of 9 to 5 or longer hours of working, and ready to adopt this flexibility in the timing that the employees or the work requirements will need now?
Yes, 100%. Probably the workforce constitution of the bank might undergo a change. A lot of European banks work housewives for their work during the afternoon, and it has been a success. It's time that we adopted such models. We at Equitas are actually actively considering such models as to how we can best utilize our workforce. What are my peak times? What are my peak customer times? How So those things will become more and more prevalent in India as well.
That's a very significant point you make, Pallab, which is the composition of workforce, and therefore there is an opportunity for profiles which till now were not even under consideration set because of the method of working or the schedule of working. That is going to change significantly. Chandru, what's your experience on this piece?
Pallab is spot on. We are working with tens of different organizations who are seeking us out to help them on recalibrating the workforce strategy. We have created our own framework called RECAP framework, RICAP. And so this framework helps organizations to reimagine their workforce strategy. And that then helps them to figure out how do you keep the core and flex the rest. In other words, what are the roles that can be kept as core essential headcount for the company, and what are the roles that could be done by a freelance or flexible workforce? Once that whole workforce strategy is finalized, what we are seeing is organizations are beginning to say, if I am going to have X percentage of flexible workforce, why would I need to have permanent workforce in the first place? Okay, I might as well have them work from home or remotely, or freelance experts could well be doing those jobs instead of me trying to have a fixed cost on my books. So then the balance between fixed and variable cost is next coming through for these companies to build resilience and also to sustain the organizations to thrive. So those are the trends which we're already seeing. Even as I speak, in the last 1 week, I spoke about half a dozen CXOs across banks just in India and Southeast Asia, who are all seeking guidance on how do you go about creating this workforce strategy and how do we go about implementing them, because they're all seeing that the whole dimension of workforce being more permanent, operating one physical space, is now passing.
There is one more aspect which comes to my mind, which is in terms of team handling and ability to connect with the team. You could have got into huddles and motivate teams and listen to the teams and solve one-to-one problems of the team members. So if you're a team leader or a supervisor of teams within the banks, because now your communications are going to be virtual and possibly to the point, how then you build up that kind of a support system for the employee?
Even today, we are working, right? And we are opening accounts. So the supervisor is not able to do physical huddles today. but he is able to do virtual huddle, and then he probably tells his people as to the route that he or she needs to take for the day. The leaders are also getting more and more accustomed to these way of working. So the part that probably the leaders are going improving upon as we speak is the part related to empathy and parts related to emotional intelligence, right? Because if I sit across the table and discuss something, or I sit in a meeting room and discuss something, then you can read my body language. You can probably feel a lot more of what I want to say. Whereas in a voice or a video, you're probably seeing a part of me or only my voice. And the leaders probably are going to become more and more cognizant of the subtleties of tone and subtleties of what is remaining unsaid, and make inferences out of those to help the team come together. The physical coming together may not be that prevalent, but we are already getting familiar to Zoom coffee sessions and things like that to build team engagement. So it's just going to grow in a virtual world, and it's going to stay.
Another question that I wanted to ask both of you is, in terms of these changes which are happening, both at the employee side, at the team leader side, at the organization side, people are going to work from home. The methods of engagements are going to evolve with more, as Pallab said, Zoom, coffee meets, and the likes. Will this bring in the requirement of some new competencies to be looked at in the employees? Will that change, Chandru?
I guess some of the competencies that we should have had in the first place, we are all guilty of not having those or not honing those skills, are now going to be a lot more pronounced. I mean, the two things that strike me are, one is empathy, and the two is ability to listen to each other a lot more. That requires, of course, the third component of it, which is patience. So empathy certainly is number one on my list, frankly. Whether you are a HR professional or whether you are a business leader, whether you are an employee, it does not really matter. But if you are empathetic to each other, even at home, you'll have better skills because you're now working from home. And if you're not empathetic to the family, the space which you are invading, they are where they are, for years. You are working from home and you get impatient with them, or you deal with them in a manner and shape which is not appropriate and not being empathetic. That's not something which is going to keep you happy both at workplace and at home. Now, if both are going to merge, both workplace and home are going to merge, then your empathy need has to really shot up on a scale of 1 to 10 to even 7 or 8. Now, question is, how do you develop that? How do you become conscious of that? That's a separate conversation by itself. The second one is, because you're not seeing each other, physically a lot more than what you probably did before, you got to listen to each other a lot more. And that's when I think we will have a lot more collaboration to take place for better productivity.
Well, upon the competency space, one is, of course, the EQ part of it. Is there also a significant change, do you think, that will be required in terms of the competency metrics required on the technical side of it? Need to be more tech savvy and comfortable with these changes? Or do you think that as it stands today in the banking industry, people are already fairly accustomed to it and therefore it does not change?
Okay, so I'll come to tech part just in a second. I think what Chandru made a point on patience, and I think that's a very important point. That patience as a component of my competency will probably need to significantly go up. The other part that I would want to talk about is discipline. Discipline on part of the employee, that even in a home setting, he or she take out those 6 to 8 hours, as the case may be, to do his or her work diligently.
Very true. Very true.
In the same quality, at the same quality that that she was producing in office, right? So that's one part of it. That on the tech side of it, yes, technical capabilities of finance slash banking. I think they already have that. There are going to be probably more products which move onto the tech platform. So we have already had banks like in our bank account, we open in 3.38 minutes. There is a second part of the tech piece, and in which I think is going to which is significant to us, as a small finance bank, because we operate at a different level, which is the tech capabilities of the customers. And there's a huge program going on where we are trying to upskill the customers also on their tech capabilities. Such as, what we are offering them on the tech platform, they're able to absorb and accept without without any fear of compromise. So tech capabilities on both sides, both on the organization side as well as the customer side, is what I feel is going to increase.
So does that mean from a learning and development perspective, you will require to possibly upskill a lot of the workforce, especially at the junior level, to get accustomed to these products and these channels? And B, there has to be possibly some kind of an investment in educating more and more customers to get comfortable with these products and these channels.
Yes, the L&D initiatives are always on. Any new product that comes from the bank, you have to educate your workforce. Even that we can, how the KYC process works, right? So we are moving into a video-based KYC process, right, today, instead of a physical KYC process. So even that process, we will have to, train our people to do it. It's probably not the most significant of the changes, but it's something that the person needs to get comfortable with. And similarly, getting when you're going to a village and asking the person to smile on a tab camera, it just needs 30 seconds more of cajoling than probably elsewhere.
So continuing on the training piece, Chandru, will the methodologies of training also undergo change? Because you've seen multiple organizations from inside outside, these e-learnings and similar kind of technology delivery, virtual deliveries. Is that going to change, and you seeing some new trends coming in there?
I guess it was already there, all of these technologies, but the exponential growth of these e-learning content managed platforms is only going to enhance. Let me give you an example of how these telecommuting platforms are contributing to e-learning. Just from a data perspective, until end of December, Zoom which we are using, Zoom had 10 million people logging in per day. By end of March, there were 200 million people per day using Zoom. And I'm just giving Zoom as an example. There is Lifesize, there is Teams, and there is Google Meet. Google Meet was free and out there for years. People have not used it significantly. They shot up in the last 3 months from 100,000, what it was being used earlier, to 2 million per day. Google Meet, which is free, right? So what are people using these for? First of all, communication, like what we are having today. The second is about engagement of the people. You could have a larger group to participate in. Third is learning. So the learning part is actually beginning to take off a lot bigger. Why? Because you're learning from the comfort of your home or workplace or a coffee shop, wherever you're learning from. And two, the whole digital way of learning, which has launched itself many years ago, is now being leveraged by the Gen Y and Gen Z a lot more. And because these guys are already using your Facebooks of the world and the Instagram and the Snapchat and what have you, for them, anything to do with digitalized way of learning is a welcome sign for them. So adoption of that is pretty easy for them. In fact, the adoption of that for the Gen X, which is ourselves, would have been a lot more challenging. But I guess even Gen X is joining the gang in the way we're learning very rapidly on how we can learn digital. So yeah, the short answer therefore is it's going to see an exponential growth in the way e-learning will take place globally.
We can, Pallab, one specific question I wanted to understand from you is we are seeing a lot of social media posts in terms of e-joining happening. People are joining banks, and that is possibly a new trend that we have not seen earlier. Similarly, on the recruitment side of it, how does the HR of today tune itself in terms of e-recruitment practices or e-joining practices? Are there any changes that you're seeing over there, and what are the kind of trends?
Oh, we are doing e-joining. Like, from March to today, I have had some 300 people joining, about 22 people in mid-management and above. And I have personally called at least 15 of them, and they've all kind of loved the experience. Okay, so e-joining is here. It's there in at Equitas. So we have already so that is happening big time. Recruitment also, as a practice, we were quite used to video conference meetings and things like that. At senior levels, probably we will still have some kind of physical meeting, but yes, with at mid to junior, you use gamification, you use other as a kind of technical tools to assess competencies. So all those are there, and there, and probably as Chandru mentioned in respect to digitization, there the penetration is going to increase. Yes, the penetration is going to increase, but they're already there, and they're here to stay. Because both in terms of pure convenience, it's much easier, right? If I'm able to join at any place that I want to join, and I'm getting my even my Aadhaar or whatever verified through a DigiLocker kind of thing, then the HR ops people are also happier, right? So yes, it is here, and it's here to stay.
Okay, my last question for today's session is around the challenges which banking industry is facing in terms of the business impact. So there is going to be a significant amount of financial impact on the lending business, on the liability business, and since profitability is going to get impacted, also the momentum of the business is going to get impacted. Will this bring in job cuts in banking, significant job cuts in banking? How long are these job cuts going to continue? Is it for a fairly long period of time? And more importantly, I would want to hear from both of you would be somebody aspiring to join into banking, aspiring a career in banking. Is it the right time to plan for getting into banking, or banking is going through a lot of turmoil from an HR perspective? Chandru?
I think banking as a concept is now, in want of a better word, a lot more democratized. I see banking as a set of processes and transactions and services that needed to be provided to people. Now, in the last 10 years, probably even longer, maybe 15 years, the acceleration of so-called banking bouquet of services has been split into different products and services, and those are something which are now being invaded by fintech companies. Let me give a live example of a Vietnam CEO I was talking to just the other day, and he was saying that in a country which is as small as Vietnam, which is embracing technology a lot more rapidly, he's seeing that the core banking would remain the same, which is more about the current account, savings account, deposit mobilization kind of a thing, and the basic lending in that sense. But the rest of the services which are there from a retail or a wholesale banking perspective, whether you take from the retail mortgage or a credit cards or a personal loans and what have you at the retail level, and the wholesale level about the trade and the bank guarantees and the LCs and even lending for SMEs. Each one of those now branched out into different companies, fintech businesses across the world. Now, Vietnam has actually gone through the process of distribution network of companies across. But now what I hear there is that they are now aggregating it. So a core bank, you could start as a banking company, but then after that, all of these different fintech companies could integrate their APIs into these banks and ensure that you really don't have to reinvent the wheel for the products and services that you want to offer as a bank. You might as well integrate and aggregate all of these platforms and still make it available to the customer. So to that extent, what is happening is the number of jobs that are getting created are multiplying. It's not reducing. Okay, because each one now want to market and each one want to use technology to create their products. Each one want to provide services to the customers, and each one want to convert the deals into revenue and accounting for what we've done from building a business. So the replication of the whole business activities that's happening across 900 fintech companies in Singapore, which was the number here, versus for about 65 banks in Singapore. You take all of these and look at each one of those countries and visualize for ourselves the multiplication factor of expansion of the financial services industry that's happening rather than contraction. That will give you an idea about the opportunity that could come through for people to join, not calling it as banking, but call it more about banking and financial services industry. That's where the space is getting itself expanded.
Pallab, your thoughts? Do you think the banking jobs are getting contracted or it is getting increased multifold?
No, absolutely. He's right that there's a lot of fintech companies which are there today, and probably at some stage they will merge in India as well. But in as a segment, BFSI will continue to grow because today, just as an example, I have Equitas as a customer base of around 30 lakh customers, and there are about 52 odd banks in India outside the foreign banks, of course. So if one was to look at it, I'm looking at an average customer base of around 2.6 crores, even if each one was to have a one single account. So therefore, I'm looking at a 10 times expansion if I need to have 100% penetration of banking. So therefore, there's no doubt that that's going to be a huge expansion. India is still quite underbanked, and I personally have a lot of belief that yes, there's a temporary blip with respect to where we are today, but come probably next year we are again going to see an expansion in the overall economy. Hopefully, the vaccine would be available by then, and we are just at the cusp of growth. Yes, there could be the specialization, so to say, of the banking world might dilute a little bit, but bankers are here to stay. It's still going to be a very, very large employment base in India.
So that's a very, very big silver lining. Both of you have laid out. Chandru mentioned it from the technology changes which are happening. You're saying in terms of the opportunity that is available, it will still require a significant amount of resourcing for the banks to encash on the opportunity that is available. This brings in a lot of hope for people who are aspiring to be bankers or who are in banking right now. That things are temporary, and as Pallab mentioned, it's a blip. Yeah, and possibly it'll get turned around very, very soon. So I thank you both. Thank you, Chandru, and thank you, Pallab, for taking the time out from the busy schedules and joining us and sharing your perspectives on the HR, on the manpower related, on the workplace related changes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Yeah.
Bye. Enjoy.